You've heard me talk about Missouri workers' compensation being a conspiracy, and that's because it is. The government has conspired with big business and insurance companies to not pay injured workers after an accident. And I'm going to explain why I believe it's a conspiracy and give you some examples. So this was a truck accident case that we handled in Missouri. We resolved it for millions of dollars. It's the inspiration for our billboards that you've seen around town. Person had a herniated disc, needed surgery. What happens if that same injury happened at work? Number one, the law says you don't get to sue the employer. Workers' compensation is your exclusive remedy. So if you're working on the industrial line at work and you get injured, you don't get to sue the employer. You must file a workers' compensation claim. That's your only remedy. That's the only way you get money. There is an exception to that called something more, but for the most part, you can never sue your employer. So now we're stuck in the workers' compensation arena, and we have this thing called the meat chart. And I said you had a herniated disc, let's say it's in your neck. The body as a whole is worth 400 weeks of pay. So they send you to a doctor, and that's number two of the conspiracy, right? You don't get to sue them, you have to file workers' compensation, and the employer, even though this is America and you think you get to choose your own doctor, that's not the way it works. If you want work comp to pay for it, you got to go to their doctor in Missouri. That's the law. So they send you to their doctor, and I'm going to call him Dr. No. And Dr. No says, you have an injury, but it's not from work. It's degenerative. And Dr. No says, you need the surgery, but because of this degenerative condition and not from work. And Dr. No says, you have no disability, or it's very low. And let's say the doctor says that your disability at the 400-week level for a herniated disc in your neck is 5%. 5% of 400 is 20 weeks of pay. So you get 20 weeks of pay at 2/3 of your average weekly wage. If you make 600 hours a week, 2/3 would be 400 hours. 20 weeks of disability, or 5%, would be $8,000. So on the one hand, car accident with a truck, you get millions. Work comp, you get $8,000. So that's when you decide, oh, no way, I need a lawyer, they're cheating me. And you call Cantor Injury Law. And what we do for you, and we don't charge a fee on the medical, we don't charge a fee on your lost wages. We take a fee of 25% of that lump sum at the end of the case, or any disability benefits that we have to fight to win. So if they're giving them to you anyway, we don't take a fee on that. So investigate what the law firm is actually charging when you call around. At Cantor Injury Law, we then send you to our doctor. And our doctor might say you're permanently and totally disabled. You can never work again. Or you have a 50% disability. Even if they say 50% of disability, you're still confined to this meat chart. There's no pain and suffering. 50% of 400 weeks is 200 weeks of pay. So now you got this bad disc in your neck and you've had a surgery and you're getting offered 200 weeks of pay. It's even worse. I'm going to give you a couple examples. So if it's a shoulder injury, your shoulder is worth 232 weeks of pay. So if you get your arm cut off right here at your shirt line, they're going to give you 232 weeks of pay at 2/3 of your average weekly wage. Your wrist, you get your arm cut off at your wrist. It doesn't matter whether it's your right hand or left hand, and your right hand dominant in Missouri, that doesn't matter. It doesn't say that on the meat chart, which one's dominant. If you get your arm cut off at your wrist, you get 175 weeks at 2/3 of your average weekly wage. So really, basically, they're paying you for, a year and a quarter to have no hand. So that is why workers' compensation is a conspiracy, because there's no money for pain and suffering, because it's the only way you can recover from your employer, and because your benefits are limited. You're entitled to 3 benefits, and normally these insurance companies, they accept premiums and they don't pay benefits. So they're trying to cheat you on every single one of those benefits. First is 2/3 of your wages. I set the case law in Missouri, a case called TH versus Sonic. I put max rate on the claim form for a woman that was earning $2.10 an hour plus tips, and the employer failed to file a timely answer. It's ridiculous that they're paying you 2/3, and then they get to calculate how that is. If you're injured, you need to know exactly what your wages are. if you haven't been, what if you've only worked there for a week and then you get your arm cut off, God forbid? Then what do? Well, you look at a comparative employee. Okay, and you gotta have a lawyer that fights for that, because they're gonna try to cheat you on the very first thing, which is the base number for how do you calculate this meat chart. It's based on 2/3 of your wages. So the first thing is rate, 2/3 of your wages while you're off. The second is 100% of your authorized medical. Well, what happens if you get to the end of your medical care and the doctor says you don't need any more care, you don't need physical therapy, you don't need a nerve cord stimulator, you don't need another surgery, your neck is fused, and then I send you to a doctor and the doctor says, well, your neck's not fused, it's unstable, you need more physical therapy, you probably need another surgery, you certainly need pain management, all these things, a lifetime of care. How do you compare those things? How do you win that case? Well, you win it by having a threat of going to trial. And unless you have a competent lawyer that goes to trial on these things all the time, even during COVID, even, it's November 30th, 2020, you got to be able to go or have the threat of going to trial. I personally enjoy having a hearing in workers' compensation. They're not hard. I can do them in my sleep, okay? But you got to be able to do it. And if you can't do it, you're not going to get full value for your case. And by the way, in the example that I gave you, if this happened to you because a truck hit you, you have two cases. You have the claim against the employer for workers' compensation, and you have your civil lawsuit against the trucking company. And then there's something called subrogation, where you have to pay back a certain amount in work comp, okay? The Rudiker formula, and I've taught lawyers and judges how to do this and given CLEs, but you don't get both. That's another part of the conspiracy. So a truck hits you, you're off of work pays you while you're off, then you win millions of dollars from the trucking company, and guess what? You got to pay back some to comp. A good lawyer is going to fight what you have to pay back. The same thing is true with Social Security. You injure yourself at work, the employer tries to buy you out of your claim. If you don't do it right, and you don't do what's called a Social Security addendum, and Social Security is federal benefits, then they're going to try to cut those benefits. So workers' compensation really is a conspiracy. The government's trying to get their money back, the insurance companies are trying to get their money back, the employer's trying not to pay you money, the insurance company is collecting benefits and not paying you. You're on your own without a lawyer. So if you need help, if you have a serious and legitimate injury case, I'm not talking about something with little medical care, okay? We're interested in serious injury cases where you need serious help. I've done this for 30 years. I will personally meet with you. We have a whole workers' compensation department at Cantor Injury Law. I pride ourselves in not settling for less and not being a settlement factory. It's not an industrial line here. You may have been injured on one, but when you come here, we're going to fight hard for you. This is what we do. I'm Mark Cantor. It's my firm. I'm proud of it. Cantor Injury Law, 314-628-9999. Please call if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.